The overarching tension in Book 4 is that between fate and duty on the one side and desire and personal inclination on the other. Aeneas himself, in many ways, would prefer to remain in Carthage with the queen, for whom he has genuine feelings. However, he's pressed on by his sense of duty towards his people and his son, who will take over his power and continue his mission of creating a great state. When Dido learns of his plans to leave Carthage, she, like any hurt lover, reproaches him for his lack of fidelity and honesty. In his defense, Aeneas claims that in leaving Africa, he's not following his own personal inclinations, but rather the demands of the fates and the gods. He says, quote, "It is not by my own will that I search for Italy." Along the same lines, he claims that if he himself could decide, he would have remained in Troy and rebuilt the city there. But now he has no choice but to follow the commands of the gods. He refers to Apollo and Jupiter, who both demand that he move on and make a new homeland in Italy. In Book 6, when Aeneas sees the shade of Dido in the underworld, she repeats the same argument, but to no avail, claiming, "I swear by the stars, by the gods above, by whatever there is to swear by in the depths of the earth, it was against my will, O Queen, that I left your shore. It was the stern authority of the commands of the gods that drove me on." He must sacrifice his own love for Dido and his destiny for that of his people. Virgil describes this concisely, quote, "Aeneas was faithful to his duty." His inner conflict is portrayed as follows, quote, "Much as he longed to soothe her and console her sorrow, to talk to her and take away her pain, with many a groan and with a heart shaken by his great love, he nonetheless carried out the commands of the gods and went back to his ships." Similarly, he is said to have, quote, "felt the pain deep in his mighty heart." So Aeneas must sacrifice his love for a higher duty. We noted that the Homeric heroes are known for specific qualities, such as cunning Odysseus or swift-footed Achilles. Aeneas's epithet is pious, that is, pious or devout. This is signaled at the beginning of the work when he's introduced as, quote, "a man famous for his piety," or pietate in Latin. In Book 6, the Sibyl describes him as, quote, "Trojan Aeneas, famous for his devotion," pietate again, and his feats of arms. When he's reunited with his father in Elysium, Anchises says to him, "I knew your devotion, pietas, would prevail over all rigor of the journey and bring you to your father." By making piety or devotion the defining feature of his hero, Virgil is consciously departing from the Homeric tradition. The Homeric heroes had epithets that concerned, for the most part, their military prowess. They were strong, fast, or skilled with weapons, or in making strategies. By contrast, Aeneas is defined for his moral quality. Although he's also a great warrior, this is in many ways something secondary. What's important about him is not his military strength, but an inward characteristic. This is a new kind of hero. So what exactly is meant by the term piety and by referring to Aeneas as pious? Today, when we say someone is pious, this means that they're especially religious or strictly keep to specific religious beliefs, duties, or rituals. This overlaps with the Roman sense of piety, but does not exhaust the meaning of the term, which has much broader implications due to the fact that religion for the Romans had a much wider meaning. Roman religion was bound up with traditions and customs relating to the state and the family. This was due to the fact that, as we have noted, the state had its own gods, as did each family. Thus, religion was not conceived as something primarily individual or confined to a narrow sphere of life as we often tend to think of it today. Instead, for the Romans, it refers to one's dedication to one's family and, by extension, one's people. Aeneas is called upon to save his family and all of the refugees from the burning Troy so that a new start can be made. He's said to be pious since he's willing to endure enormous personal sacrifices for the sake of his people and his family line. He is, in the first line, devoted to them and only secondarily to his own desires and wishes. Thus, his epithet pious can be translated as dutiful, since he's aware of his duty as his guiding principle. This is illustrated by the story of his love for Queen Dido, which stands in contradiction to his duty to his family and people. This quality of piety might seem somewhat less heroic than the more martial qualities of the Homeric heroes, but yet it's also in some ways more modern and sympathetic. His life of self-sacrifice can be contrasted with the self-indulgence of Achilles, who at first refuses to fight due to an insult suffered and then precipitously throws himself into the battle again, not for the sake of the general cause, but only as a personal vendetta to avenge the death of his friend. Similarly, Odysseus' mission is all about himself, returning to his home and restoring his fortune, even if this means the destruction of all of his men. Compared to Aeneas, both Achilles and Odysseus appear to be hopelessly self-centered people whose only thought is for themselves. In stark contrast, Aeneas must put his own personal desires and wishes aside in order to fulfill the destiny of his people and his family, which he himself will never have the opportunity to enjoy.